Before I dive into what happened, I want you to take a moment and imagine something with me. Imagine the smell of wood that's been polished so many times it practically glows in the sunlight. Imagine shelves lined with old photographs of family members who spent their lives behind a counter, shaking hands with customers, teaching their children the trade, and passing down not just a business, but a way of life. That was my childhood. Our family business wasn't just for walls, and a cash registrant was a legacy. It was my great-grandfather's dream, my grandfather's pride, my father's sweat, and eventually, my responsibility. The shop had stood for nearly 90 years. It wasn't flashy, not some giant chain or sleek corporation. It was a small-town store that specialized in handcrafted goods, antiques, and personalized repairs. People didn't just shop there. They came for advice, for conversation, for connection. I remember being a kid and sitting behind the counter on a stool too tall for my legs to reach the ground, swinging my feet while my dad worked. He'd explain to me how each item told a story. A chair wasn't just a chair, it was the hours someone spent shaping it. A watch wasn't just a watch, it was a timeline of memories. That sense of respect for craftsmanship, for history, got planted in me early. By the time I was a teenager, working in the shop wasn't optional. It was expected. Summers meant unpacking shipments, learning how to polish, learning how to talk to customers. I didn't resent it, I loved it. I loved the rhythm of opening the store in the morning, unlocking the creaky front door, flipping the sign from closed to open, and hearing the little bell jingle. To most people, that bell was nothing. But to me, it was the sound of family history breathing another day. When my father passed away, the business naturally shifted into my hands and those of my siblings. It wasn't a smooth transition, nothing in families ever is, but we all understood one thing. The shop was our anchor. We didn't always agree on decisions, but we agreed on its importance. Or at least, I thought we did. The betrayal came like lightning on a clear day. There wasn't a warning, not a single hint. I was at home when my phone rang. It was a friend, his voice hesitant. "Hey, did you sell the shop?" he asked. I laughed. "What are you talking about?" "No? Well, then you'd better get down there, because there's a big sold sign out front." I thought he was joking. I actually hung up, thinking he was pulling some cruel prank. But something inside me twisted, an instinct. And I grabbed my keys and drove faster than I should have. When I turned onto Main Street and saw it for myself, our storefront with that ugly, bold red sold plastered across the window's eyes, swear my body went cold. At first, my brain refused to process it. I walked up and down the sidewalk, staring, telling myself maybe it was a mistake. Maybe it was just a temporary thing, or maybe the sign was for the property next door. But then I saw them. Strangers inside the shop, walking around like they owned the place already, pointing at shelves, taking notes. One of them even laughed, and that laugh sliced me open. I yanked the door open and marched inside. "Excuse me," I said, my voice shaking. "What are you doing here?" One of the men looked at me like I was intruding. "We're the new owners," he said casually, like it was the most normal thing in the world. "The paperwork's finalized." "The what?" I asked. My chest felt like it was caving in. "The paperwork," he repeated. "You'll have to take it up with the family. We're just here to get measurements." I stumbled out of the store like I was drunk, my vision blurring. My hands were trembling so badly I could barely pull my phone out to call my brother. When he finally answered, his tone was flat. "Yeah, we sold it," he said, like it was nothing. "You what?" I screamed into the phone. "You sold our family's business without me? Without even asking me?" "It's complicated," he said. "We needed the money. It was the best choice." "The best choice," I repeated, my voice cracking. "For who?" "For you." He mumbled something about debts, about opportunities, about how times have changed. I barely heard him. My ears were ringing. My body was on autopilot, walking down the street, trying to breathe while people stared at me like I'd lost my mind. That night, I couldn't sleep. I just sat in my living room, staring at old photo albums, pictures of me at age 7, sweeping, The shop floors? Pictures of my dad smiling as he stood behind the counter, his apron dusted with sawdust. Pictures of family reunions, where the shop was always the backdrop. And now, it was gone. Just like that. Not because of fire, not because of bankruptcy, not because of a natural disaster, but because my own family decided I didn't matter. The betrayal burned deeper than I can describe. It wasn't just about money. It wasn't even just about the shop. It was about trust, about loyalty, about respect. To find out from a stranger that my entire family history had been signed away without me, it felt like being erased from my own bloodline. The following days were a blur of unanswered calls, ignored texts, and half-baked excuses. My siblings avoided me, probably because they knew what they had done was indefensible. I wanted answers, but more than that, I wanted to understand how people I loved could look me in the eye for years, knowing they planned to cut me out. But here's the thing about betrayal, it's never just about the one act. It's about all the cracks it reveals. All the hidden resentments, the unspoken tensions, the quiet lies. And as I started digging into how and why the sale happened, I began to realize this wasn't just one decision. It was years in the making. And the truth was far uglier than I was prepared for. If chapter 1 was the shock, then chapter 2 was the storm. The days following the discovery of the sale felt like living in a bad dream. I'd wake up every morning half convinced that I had imagined it all. That I'd drive downtown and find the shop just as it had always been. But every time I passed by, the sight of new faces inside, moving boxes around, and measuring shelves forced reality back down my throat. It was gone. And worse, it was taken without me. I started by trying to corner my siblings, thinking maybe there had been some horrible misunderstanding. Maybe my signature had been forged. Maybe someone tricked them. I sat down with my sister first. She was always the peacemaker growing up, the one who hated conflict. I thought, surely, she'd tell me the truth. But when I confronted her, she avoided my eyes. We didn't have a choice, she muttered, stirring her coffee like it was suddenly the most interesting thing in the world. What do you mean you didn't have a choice? I demanded. You had every choice. We could have found another way. You could have talked to me. She finally looked up, and there was something cold in her eyes I had never seen before. Not everything revolves around you, she said sharply. You've been acting like the shop was only yours. We were tired of it. Her words landed like a punch. Acting like it was only mine? I wanted to scream that I had been the one showing up every day. That I was the one keeping it alive when they were too busy with their own lives. But instead, I just sat there, stunned. The betrayal wasn't just financial. It was personal. Somewhere along the line, resentment had grown like a weed. Silent but steady, until it strangled whatever loyalty remained. And then came the bombshell. My brother finally admitted why they sold. Debts. Not just his own, but a mess of bad investments, credit card bills, and a failed business venture he hadn't told anyone about. He had used the shop as collateral without ever asking me. By the time he confessed, it was already too late. The deal had been made. I remember sitting in my car after that conversation, gripping the steering wheel so hard my knuckles turned white. All those years of sacrifice, all the nights I stayed up balancing the books. All the pride I cared about continuing the family tradition wiped away because my brother wanted to gamble on some half-baked business idea. The worst part, my mother knew. She had known for months. She had chosen to keep it from me because, in her words, you would have overreacted. Overreacted. That word echoed in my head for days. Was it overreacting to care about a century-old family business? Was it overreacting to expect to be included in decisions that shaped our entire legacy? Or was it just easier for them to cut me out, to silence the one person who would have fought tooth and nail to protect what we had? That's when the legal fight began. I sat down with a lawyer, desperate to know if I had any recourse. He listened patiently, flipping through documents. and then delivered the crushing verdict. Because my name wasn't formally listed on certain ownership papers my father had never updated before his deal technically had no legal standing. I was family. Yes. I was blood. Yes. I had poured decades of sweat into that store. Yes. But in the cold eyes of the law, I was just. Nobody! Dot the injustice! Burn like acid! It wasn't just that they had betrayed me, it was that they had planned it, maneuvered it, and legally locked me out long before I ever knew what was happening. Meanwhile, the community was just as shocked. Longtime customers stopped me on the street, asking why I would sell. Some were angry, thinking I had betrayed them. Others were sad, mourning the loss of a place that had been more than a shop, it had been a meeting point, a heartbeat of the town. I didn't know what to say. Every question felt like salt in a wound I couldn't close. Nights were the hardest. I'd lie awake, my mind replaying every memory inside that shop. The creak of the wooden floors, the smell of sawdust mixed with old leather, the sound of my father's laugh echoing in the back room. I'd remember him telling me once, "This place will always be here for you, as long as you take care of it." And now, it wasn't because my own family decided I didn't deserve a voice, but here's where things started to shift. As I dug deeper into the paperwork, into the timeline, into every shady detail of how the sale went down, I realized something horrifying. This wasn't just about debts or resentment. There was more. Someone, maybe my brother, maybe even more than one of them, had deliberately altered documents. There were missing signatures, backdated agreements, and numbers that didn't add up. The betrayal wasn't just emotional anymore. It was criminal. And the more I uncovered, the clearer it became. If I wanted to save what was left of my family's honor, I'd have to fight not just for a business, but for the truth itself. By the time Chapter 3 began in my life, I was no longer just grieving a loss, I was preparing for war. The anger that had once left me sleepless was now fueling every step I took. I wasn't just a forgotten sibling anymore. I was the one determined to drag every hidden truth into the light, no matter how ugly it got. The first step was gathering evidence. I spent weeks poring through old financial records, property deeds, even my father's will. The deeper I went, the dirtier it looked. Dates didn't match. Signatures were inconsistent. Deals had been struck behind closed doors, with no witnesses. What started as suspicion quickly hardened into certainty. This wasn't just a bad decision. It was fraud. I filed suit. The moment the papers were served, the silence broke. My siblings, once so smug and untouchable, suddenly wanted to talk. They called, they texted, they begged me to settle quietly. But I had crossed a line I couldn't uncross. This wasn't just about the business anymore. It was about truth, respect, and justice. The courtroom battle was brutal. Lawyers dissected every detail of our family history like it was evidence in a crime scene. Strangers sat on benches, watching us tear each other apart. I remember sitting there, looking across at my own brother and sister, and feeling like I didn't recognize them anymore. Testimonies revealed secrets I wish I'd never heard. My brother had forged my father's signature on a loan document. My sister had known but stayed silent, terrified of what would happen if the truth came out. My mother admitted on the stand that she had urged them to sell quietly, believing it would keep the peace. The weight of those confessions crushed me. It wasn't just one. Betrayal, it was all of them, together. The judge's ruling didn't give me the shop back. By the time the legal system churned through its slow wheels, the new owners were already established. The shop, as I knew it, was gone forever. But what the judge did grant me was validation, recognition that fraud had occurred, that my exclusion had been unjust, that my family's hands were not clean. Financial restitution was ordered. My siblings were left disgraced. Their reputations in ruins. But here's the thing about justice, it doesn't always feel like victory. Walking out of that courtroom, I didn't feel triumphant. I felt hollow. I had proven my point. Exposed the lies, forced accountability, but the cost was everything I had once held dear. My family, my childhood sanctuary. the very sense of belonging that had shaped me. In the months that followed, I tried to rebuild. I opened a small workshop of my own, starting fresh. Customers from the old shop trickled in, offering support. They told me I was the true heir, the one who carried the spirit of the place, even if the building was gone. Their words gave me strength, but the scars remained. Sometimes, late at night, I drive past the old storefront. The new owners painted it a different color, changed the sign, gutted the inside. It doesn't look like home anymore. And yet, every time I hear the faint jingle of a doorbell in another shop, my chest tightens. I'll always carry the sound of our family's store in my heart. This is the lesson betrayal carved into me. Blood doesn't always mean loyalty. Legacy doesn't guarantee respect. And sometimes the people you trust most are the ones who take the knife to your back. But I also learned this, even when everything tangible is stolen. The values, the lessons, and the love you poured into something can't be erased. My family may have sold the building, but they couldn't sell my memories. They couldn't sell my determination! And they sure as hell couldn't sell the truth. So I moved forward, not with the business I thought I'd inherit, but with a new one built on my own terms. A business that honors the past without being chained to it. A life that acknowledges the betrayal without letting it define me. And when people ask me what happened to our heirloom family shop, I tell them the truth. Because silence protects the betrayer, but honesty keeps the betrayed alive. Before I go any further, let me ask you this. What would you have done if your own blood sold your family's legacy behind your back? Would you walk away? Or would you fight until the very last breath? I keep asking myself that question because the truth is, every choice I made from here on wasn't just about justice, it was about survival.